It may sound strange to you when I say that evil has no real existence of its own. To many, evil appears so dreadful, so powerful, that it seems almost to possess a life of its own, a black kingdom ruling in rivalry against the kingdom of God. But this is a profound misunderstanding. Evil is not original. It is not creative. It is never the first note in the melody. It can only corrupt what is already there. It has no substance in itself, but feeds parasitically on what is good. Think of rust upon iron, mildew upon bread, rot upon a tree. All of these are disfigurations of something once strong, nourishing, or beautiful. None of them could exist without the prior existence of the very thing they destroy. So it is with evil. It is not the rival of good, but the shadow cast by good when it is turned away from the light. When I speak of evil as parasitic, I mean that it depends entirely upon good for its being. For example, pride, the oldest and most insidious of sins, can only exist in creatures capable of dignity, nobility, and excellence. The devil himself was once an angel of light. Pride is the twisting of greatness into self-worship. It cannot create greatness. It can only pervert it. Likewise, lust is the distortion of love. Cruelty is the corruption of strength. Cowardice is the corruption of caution. Idolatry is the corruption of reverence. Evil is not a thing standing on its own legs, but a disease in the bones of goodness. This explains why evil is always disappointing. The promise of evil is always more than its performance. It is like salt water to the thirsty man. It tantalizes the lips, but poisons the stomach. The liar must lean on truth to make his lies plausible. The thief must lean on the concept of ownership to make theft meaningful. Even rebellion against God testifies to his reality, for one cannot rebel against what does not exist. The man who curses heaven shows, by the very act of cursing, that heaven is there. Now, this, you see, is why evil can never triumph in the end. It is doomed by its very nature. Since it is a parasite, its survival depends on the host. Destroy the good altogether, and evil starves with it. A world wholly given over to evil could not exist. It would unravel like a rope whose threads have been cut. Darkness, after all, is only the absence of light. And if all light were gone, darkness itself would vanish with it, for there would be nothing left to perceive. Let us imagine a fallen soul, one who has surrendered utterly to evil. Even then, what remains within him is not some pure essence of wickedness, but the fractured remnants of good things twisted out of shape. His intelligence, his capacity for will, his very existence, these are gifts of God, still bearing the stamp of their Maker, even though they have been bent toward rebellion. The most wicked man who ever lived is still, in a mysterious sense, living on borrowed goodness. This truth may seem abstract, but it has deep, practical consequences. For one thing, it spares us from a grave mistake, that of imagining evil as an equal and opposite rival to God. There are some who picture the universe as a kind of dualism, a cosmic chess match, in which good and evil are locked in battle forever, equally strong. That is not Christianity. That is not reality. Satan is not God's opposite. He is God's creature. His rebellion is not the launching of a rival empire, but the vandalism of an existing kingdom. And this insight also changes how we ought to respond to evil in our own lives. When we feel its tug within ourselves, we must remember that the temptation is always to take a good gift and twist it out of proportion. When we grow angry, the sin lies not in anger itself, for anger may be righteous, but in allowing it to become bitterness or cruelty. When we desire, the sin lies not in desiring, but in tearing the desire away from its proper place and elevating it above God. Evil never offers us anything new. It merely inflates one appetite until it devours all the rest. Indeed, one might say that sin is rather boring. The sinner thinks he is tasting forbidden fruit, something wild and original. But in truth, he is only tasting fruit already spoiled. Every road of evil eventually leads to monotony, despair, and disillusionment. The fresh air of joy, the inexhaustible surprises of love, the boundless horizons of God's truth, all of these belong only to the good. If this is so, then our task is not merely to avoid evil, but to cherish and guard the good. The Christian life is not a gray resistance, a joyless saying no to sin. It is an ever-deepening yes to God. It is learning to love what is real so deeply that the counterfeit loses its appeal. You cannot chase away the shadows by striking them with a stick. You can only banish them by letting in more light. Therefore, we must remember that holiness is not a thin, brittle state, but the richest and most expansive condition a soul can know. Sin shrinks us, virtue enlarges us, sin isolates us, love binds us into fellowship. Sin blinds us, truth awakens us to see. Evil is a parasite, but good is the fountain from which all life flows. And so, to follow Christ is not merely to resist corruption, but to return to the source, to the spring, to the living water that cannot run dry. To perceive evil as a parasite is also to recognize the subtlety with which it operates. It rarely bursts upon the world in dramatic spectacles, though it can do so. More often, it creeps in like mildew upon the wall, slowly, almost imperceptibly, staining what was once bright. A seemingly small dishonesty, a little cruelty, a moment of impatience. Each of these is a tiny breach, a point of entry, and yet each points backward to the good that it distorts: honesty, kindness, patience. In this way, evil is always revealing what is true. It cannot create truth, but it can highlight its absence. This is why we are never justified in despairing at the presence of evil, for the very fact that we recognize its horror is testimony to the good implanted in our hearts. We recoil from injustice because justice is written upon our souls. We lament suffering because love is native to our being. Evil may try to masquerade as a rival, but every scream of anguish it provokes, every tear it draws, bears witness to the better world God intended and still intends. Even in the darkest moment, a soul capable of horror is also capable of hope. And hope is no trivial thing. It is the light by which the parasite is finally exposed. In the heart that clings to God, evil loses its power to deceive entirely. It may still wound, still disfigure, still tempt, but it can never dominate. This is the mystery of redemption. God does not annihilate the parasite by destroying the host. Rather, he heals the host, fortifying it with grace, so that the parasite falls away, starved and impotent. The evil that once seemed invincible is revealed as the hollow mockery it always was. Consider, too, the moral imagination of the human mind. We often picture evil as a dark force lurking outside ourselves, ready to pounce. Yet, the truer battle is inward. The temptations of pride, envy, gluttony, or sloth are not enemies from without. They are distortions of our own capacities. And just as a parasite cannot exist without a host, sin cannot survive where virtue thrives. Courage, humility, generosity, and faith are the natural barriers that the parasite cannot breach. By cultivating these qualities, we do not simply resist evil. We render it unnecessary, superfluous, incapable of feeding upon us. And so, dear friends, let us never underestimate the power of ordinary goodness. A kind word, a patient silence, a faithful act may appear inconsequential, but they starve the parasite in ways that great battles cannot. Evil is never vanquished by hatred or fury. It is not a force to be combated with fists or schemes, but with light, with love, with fidelity to the good already present. The moment a man chooses virtue over vice, he is striking at the very heart of the parasite. Yet this truth also calls us to vigilance, for parasites are subtle, they are patient, they exploit what we neglect. The good must be nourished continually, through prayer, through reflection, through acts of mercy. Let a soul grow complacent in its virtues, and evil will find a foothold in the cracks. But let it remain attentive, disciplined, and humble, and evil finds no place to root. Like frost on a well-tended garden, it may touch the surface, but it cannot penetrate to destroy the life within. Thus, we see that the nature of evil is not in its ferocity, but in its dependence. It is always a distortion, always a parasite, always a witness to the very goodness it would destroy. And by understanding this, we gain not only a clearer vision of the world, but also a practical guide for living. Cherish the good, resist the corruption, cultivate virtue, and you shall find that the parasite loses all dominion over you. We might also consider the beauty of this design, if I may use that word. For evil, in its parasitic nature, ultimately glorifies that which it seeks to deform. A tree that is gnawed by worms still displays its own green leaves. A river fouled by filth nevertheless flows toward the sea. In the human soul, the very awareness of sin is evidence of something higher within us. When we recoil from cruelty, when we grieve over pride, when we struggle with envy, it is not the parasite speaking. It is the host asserting its original purpose. The more insidious the corruption, the more luminous the goodness that is being violated. This paradox is often overlooked, yet it is the key to understanding both moral experience and spiritual hope. And here we must speak of freedom, for evil would have no domain were it not for the gift of choice. God, in His wisdom, did not bind His creatures in chains of perfect obedience. He granted them the liberty to turn toward or away from Him. This freedom allows for the flourishing of genuine love, genuine courage, genuine virtue. But it also allows the parasite to cling, for sin cannot cling where the will is absent. In this, we see yet another reflection of the divine mind. The allowance of evil is not an oversight, nor a failure of power, but a necessary condition for the authenticity of good. To love without choice would be mere mechanism. To act without trial would be no merit. Thus, when we encounter evil, within ourselves or in the world, we must neither be naive nor despairing. Naivety would suggest that evil has the substance of reality, that it can stand alone. Despair would suggest that evil can overcome the goodness that supports it. Both are mistakes. Evil is never the first note. It is always a shadow of what is true, a distortion, a parasite. Recognize it, name it, and refuse its dominion, but never grant it the authority to frighten you into inaction or hopelessness. Let us imagine a society, or even a single household, where goodness is cultivated deliberately. Acts of charity, patience, honesty, forgiveness, gratitude. These are not mere ornaments of life. They are barriers against the parasite. When such virtues are practiced faithfully, the slightest infestation of evil is starved. It may lurk in corners, whispering promises of pleasure or power, but it cannot thrive. And in this, we see the profound responsibility each human bears. Our own moral lives are both battlegrounds and fortresses, yet there is something even deeper, something almost beyond words. The parasite, for all its cunning, points us toward God. It is an unwitting signpost. Every disordered desire, every act of malice, every corruption of beauty cries out for redemption. If there were no evil, perhaps we would not even recognize our need for God. The parasite, in its parasitism, becomes a mirror, showing us the perfect design it distorts. And this, I think, is a profoundly hopeful truth. Evil exists only to highlight the goodness it envies, and in doing so, it guides the soul back toward the source of all goodness, the wellspring of life, the love that cannot be thwarted. And so, the Christian life may be summed up, in one sense, as a careful tending of the garden of the soul. We water virtue, prune selfishness, shelter the tender shoots of love, and ever watch for the subtle creeping of the parasite. We recognize it, confront it, and in the grace of God we flourish. Evil may bite, it may hiss, it may leave its stains, but it is never creative, it is never sovereign. Its end is always to fade, starved of the life it sought to corrupt. Let us now consider the paradoxical intimacy of evil. For though it is abhorrent, it is intimately bound to what is good. It lives upon it, feeds upon it, and yet cannot truly replace it. One might say that evil is like a shadow that follows the traveler along a sunlit path. It stretches long or shrinks according to the light, but it cannot exist without the very body that casts it. Every act of cruelty presupposes the capacity for kindness. Every falsehood presupposes the truth it seeks to conceal. Every sin presupposes the virtues it mocks. In this sense, evil is almost a teacher. It reveals the value of what it attacks. When we feel anger at injustice, our anger is itself testimony to the justice we long to see realized. When we lament betrayal, our lament is the echo of love betrayed. This understanding should fill us with both caution and hope. Caution, for the parasite is cunning and patient. It does not announce itself in blazing headlines, but creeps in quietly, exploiting every crack in our moral armor. The small compromises of conscience, the unspoken resentments, the indulgence of laziness or pride, all these are the hidden footholds by which evil clings. We must therefore cultivate discernment, an attentiveness to the stirrings of the heart, so that we may detect and remove the parasite before it spreads, and yet hope, for the parasite cannot exist where the host is strong. Virtue, nurtured and exercised, renders evil impotent. A soul devoted to God a life steeped in mercy, a community bound by honesty and love. These are the fortresses in which evil cannot take root. The parasite can gnaw at the edges. It may leave scars. It may even cause temporary pain, but it cannot overthrow the goodness that sustains life. Moreover, this perspective frees us from the temptation to exaggerate the power of evil. Too often, we give it credit it does not deserve, imagining it as an independent force, as though it had creative genius of its own. Nothing could be further from the truth. Evil is always derivative, always dependent, always secondary. It is the rust upon iron, not the forge itself, the mildew upon bread, not the flour and water, the parasite upon the host, not the host itself. To fear evil, as though it were sovereign, is to misunderstand its nature and to lose courage in the face of mere corruption. Yet we must also remember that the parasite can be persistent. Like a shadow, it is ever ready to return if we turn away from the light. Complacency, distraction, or neglect can allow it to creep back unnoticed. This is why the Christian life demands vigilance, prayer, and the continual practice of virtue. Each act of kindness, each moment of truth, each choice to forgive or to endure faithfully is a strengthening of the host and a starving of the parasite. The life of goodness is therefore an active, ongoing engagement, a cultivation of the soul so that evil finds nothing to feed upon. Finally, consider the ultimate destiny of the parasite. Because it is parasitic, it cannot survive apart from the good it seeks to destroy. When the source of goodness is perfected and fully realized, when God's kingdom comes in its fullness, evil will be rendered utterly impotent. It will exist no longer, for its very nature is dependent upon what it distorts. The shadow will vanish when the light is complete. The rust will disappear when the iron is refined. The parasite will starve when the host is fully restored. This is the hope that lies at the heart of Christian faith. Evil, for all its cunning, will ultimately meet defeat, not by destruction, but by the perfection of the good it once fed upon. Thus, we are called not merely to resist evil, but to foster the good, to guard it, to nurture it, and to live in such a way that the parasite cannot sustain itself. In doing so, we participate in the divine work of restoration. We live not in fear, but in hope, not in despair, but in the quiet confidence that the light of God's love is stronger than any shadow that ever seeks to cling to it. There is yet another dimension to consider: the mysterious intimacy of evil with human longing. For the parasite is not content merely with corrupting what is already present. It also disguises itself as what is most desirable. It promises joy, satisfaction, power, or freedom, yet delivers only a hollow echo of what it pretends to give. How many have been seduced by the glittering mirage, only to find that the satisfaction they sought was never there? This is because evil can imitate the good. It can counterfeit beauty. It can simulate love. It can mimic courage, but it can never create them. The imitation is always a pale reflection, and the soul endowed with the capacity to perceive true goodness eventually recognizes the fraud. Think of the child who reaches for a wax fruit, thinking it sweet, only to bite into emptiness. Or the wanderer in a dark forest, who mistakes a wolf for a kindly shepherd. Evil is cunning in this way, for it exploits desire itself. Yet here, too, is hope, the very faculties that allow us to recognize the good: reason, conscience, imagination, love. also expose the parasite. The human heart, when attuned to truth and virtue, discerns the counterfeit and recoils from it. Even the sinner is not beyond recognition. The disordered desire itself is a map pointing toward the proper end, the good it was intended to seek. This leads us to a profound reflection on patience and mercy. For in our dealings with those who have yielded to the parasite, we must remember that they are not wholly evil, for such a thing does not exist. They are souls perverted, disordered, yet still dependent on the good that sustains them. Hatred, vengeance, or scorn gives the parasite strength, for it feeds upon fear, anger, and despair. But mercy, patience, and steadfast love starve it. By embracing the goodness within the corrupted, by nurturing the virtues that remain even in the flawed, we act not only as healers, but as exorcists, expelling the parasite not with force, but with light. And there is a beauty in this, a strange and quiet glory. The parasite, for all its ugliness, serves as a reminder of the preciousness of good. Were the world perfectly ordered from the beginning, we might take virtue, love, courage, and faith for granted. But in the presence of evil, the value of goodness is made clear. The struggle against the parasite is itself a revelation. It teaches discernment, humility, fortitude, and hope. The very existence of evil can become a means by which the human soul comes to know God more fully, for it forces the choice between light and shadow, between truth and deception, between life and its hollow counterfeit. Therefore, let us live not in fear of the parasite, nor in despair at its presence, but with vigilance, courage, and joy. Let us cherish what is good, nourish it, and cultivate it in ourselves and in others. Let us recognize that the battle is never one of creation versus destruction, but of distortion versus life. Evil cannot create, it can only deform. The more we commit ourselves to the life-giving work of love, faith, and virtue, the more impotent evil becomes. And one day, in the fullness of God's kingdom, the parasite shall find itself utterly deprived of sustenance, unable to cling to the perfected good. Its shadows shall vanish, and the light shall remain, glorious and eternal. Consider, if you will, the paradoxical intimacy of joy and sorrow in the struggle with evil. The parasite, though ever present, often awakens within us the highest faculties of the soul. When we confront what is false, cruel, or unjust, we are compelled to exercise discernment, courage, and compassion. The very presence of evil, like a dark wind buffeting a ship, calls forth the sailor's skill and the mariner's courage. Without it, virtue might lie dormant, untested, unrefined. Thus, the parasite, while abhorrent, cannot extinguish the light. It may even provoke the brilliance that lies latent within our hearts. And here lies a profound Christian truth. The cross itself is the ultimate illustration of this principle. God allowed the parasite of evil, sin, cruelty, betrayal, and death, to press upon the Son, not to thwart him, but to reveal the depth of goodness, the boundless mercy, the unassailable love that lay at the heart of creation. By enduring evil without succumbing, Christ transforms suffering into a beacon, showing us that evil, however present and persuasive, cannot overcome the good that is rooted in God Himself. We may also observe the subtle artistry of the parasite in the shaping of human history. Wars, betrayals, corruptions of justice, acts of malice, they abound. Yet, in each, the good is made visible. Heroes arise, communities bind together. Ordinary souls demonstrate extraordinary courage. The parasite, in its parasitism, unwittingly provides the stage upon which virtue shines. It cannot be otherwise, for its nature is derivative. It thrives only by twisting what is true, and in doing so, it highlights the beauty of what it distorts. The greater the corruption, the more magnificent the response it evokes, and thus we are called to a patient vigilance. Evil is not a foe to be feared with trembling, nor a mystery to be solved in panic. It is a distortion to be recognized, resisted, and, where possible, redeemed. The Christian life is an apprenticeship in this very art, discerning what is good, nurturing it, defending it against distortion, and extending it even to those who have been ensnared by the parasite. In this way, the battle is waged not with fury or vengeance, but with patient cultivation, with courage, with faith, and with love. Herein lies a final comforting reflection. The parasite, by its very dependence on the good, guarantees the triumph of that which is true. Its existence proves that goodness is the original, the primary, the necessary condition of life. Shadows cannot exist without light. Echoes cannot exist without a sound to repeat. Parasites cannot exist without a host. Therefore, even in the darkest night, even in the most grievous corruption, the foundation of goodness remains, waiting to be restored, nurtured, and glorified. Let us, then, take courage. Let us cherish the virtues that starve the parasite. Let us embrace the struggles, knowing that each choice for truth, each act of love, each moment of patient endurance, diminishes the parasite's power. Let us see in evil not a sovereign force, but a dependent distortion, a fleeting shadow, a temporary parasite that can never extinguish the host it seeks to consume. And now, having walked together through the shadowed valleys of the soul, let us lift our gaze toward the ultimate hope. For the parasite, though cunning, though persistent, is not eternal. It cannot endure in the presence of the pure light. It cannot thrive when the host is strong, nourished, and alive. The very nature of evil is to feed, yet it is ever hungry. To cling, yet it is ever precarious. Its existence is a testament to the goodness it perverts, and its fate is sealed by the perfection of that goodness. Consider, if you will, the analogy of a garden overtaken by a creeping vine. At first, it may seem that all is lost, that the flowers and trees will be choked and consumed, but careful tending, removing the tendrils, nourishing the soil, planting new life, restores the garden. Over time, the vine loses its hold, and the flowers bloom with renewed beauty. So it is with the human heart and the soul. Through vigilance, grace, and the exercise of virtue, the parasite is gradually expelled. The good that was once threatened now flourishes, stronger and more radiant for having been tested. And what of the one who has faltered, who has allowed the parasite to feast upon their heart? Here, too, there is hope. For the God who first breathed life into the world continues to call, to restore, to heal. No corruption is beyond the reach of His mercy. No shadow is too dense for His light. Even the darkest soul, when it turns with sincerity, becomes a host once more, capable of nurturing goodness and starving the parasite. In this lies the profound promise of Christianity, that evil, for all its temporary victories, is ultimately impotent before the sustaining power of divine love. So let us live in courage, in patience, and in joy. Let us nurture virtue in ourselves and in others, not as a duty alone, but as a delight. For in the cultivation of goodness, we participate in the eternal work of creation. Let us confront the parasite not with fear, but with wisdom and steadfastness, knowing that its end is already determined by the life it seeks to devour. And let us remember, above all, that the smallest act of goodness, an honest word, a gentle gesture, a faithful prayer, resounds far beyond its measure, for it strengthens the host and weakens the parasite, and in so doing reveals the eternal triumph of light over shadow. In this reflection, my friends, we find both warning and encouragement. Evil is real, it is persistent, and it is parasitic, but it is not sovereign. Goodness is primary, enduring, and life-giving. The host will always outlast the parasite, and the light will always overcome the darkness. Let this truth guide your thoughts, govern your actions, and inspire your prayers. If this message has touched your heart, I invite you to share it. Like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel, so that together we may continue to explore the mysteries of life, faith, and the human soul. In this way the light spreads, and the parasite finds no home.